And welcome back to Meeting of the Minds. Today I'm here with the TNT boys, the TNT brothers, Terry and Troy Steiner, two of America's great wrestlers, great coaches of all time. Real excited to have you on, coaches.
Thank you, Gene.
Yeah, thanks for having us on.
Absolutely, absolutely. So with this whole national lockdown, what's been going on with your teams? What do you encourage them to do to get better? What should they be thinking right now?
Well, I think, the biggest thing is we got to I just told our guys we're not going to get these days back. So you've got to continue to move forward. And because before we know it, November is going to be here. Before you know it, we'll be back at the NCAs in March. So we don't get these days back to prepare. So we got to get as much out of these days as we can. And it's going to be different for everyone based on what they have and what the resources they have. So you got to focus on what you can do instead of what you can't do.
Yeah, and from our standpoint, the same. Keeping the same mindset, but we're really just reminding them that during this time, someone's going to get more out of this time than the other. It's our job to get more out of this time than the rest of the world, right? And we've got to find ways to do that, because the competitive juices can't just stop right now, right? I mean, now is when you got to keep letting it flow and keep being competitive in what we can control and what we can do. And again, it's our job to get more out of it than our competitors, no matter who they are, Japan or China or Russia or Ukraine or Canada or whatever. It's our job to get more out of this time than the rest of the world. And there's always reasons why we can't do something, and if you're looking for those reasons, you'll find a ton of them right now, right? But you got to look the other way. You got to look for reasons why you want to do something, and what does this mean to you? Your why has to be very strong right now. And so just, really focusing on that and trying to keep them together, as much as we can, even though we're socially distanced. Mentally, we need to stay connected, right? And we've been trying to do that, with a lot of calls like this, Zoom calls, and just staying together. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to ask, what are some of the concrete steps you've taken to keep them together, either on the Zoom calls, team meetings? Have they been reporting back to you about any workouts they've been doing, whether it's lifts or cardio or technique?
Yeah, we're doing a lot of, we did a team culture building session over like a 5 or 6 week period. And I know Troy did the same with his group. So we did that, and really they were engaged in that. We have weekly meetings. Now we've switched it to every other week, but at the beginning we had weekly meetings where we'd come in and just give them updates on what's going on. But we have activities throughout the week. We have stance and motion sessions that we're, thinking about wrestling and putting them through different situations, kind of where we're doing stance and motion and just different intervals and different scenarios, talking them through so they can kind of visualize a match and kind of just shadow wrestling and doing stuff like that. So we're doing that. We do team yoga sessions 2 or 3 times a week. They have their lifting sessions, strength and conditioning sessions with our strength and conditioning coordinator here at the training center. That's all virtual, of course, and he's adapting their strength and conditioning sessions to what they have with them in their own location. Everyone's different. So it's not ideal, right? We're not together, we're not on the mat, but we're finding ways to stay connected and stay together. And I think for the most part, I think they're doing a pretty good job. I mean, we definitely go through some struggles. Some people are really thriving in it. They love having the ability to create workouts on their own and being very imaginative on what they're doing and how they're getting that wrestling feel without wrestling. And so some of them are really thriving under it and love it. Others are struggling a little bit more, but and then some have siblings that, you know, they have a mat in the basement and they're continuing on training, right? And so we have some like that too. So everyone's in a different situation, and that's I think the uniqueness of it.
Yeah, and I would say the same. We're doing, the same, the Zoom calls, and we did a building thing for about a 5-week session, and our strength coach, sent out weekly guidelines, for they can follow, and but the biggest thing I kind of, in some ways, I kind of have kind of liked it, or at least the first few weeks of this, because they had to really take ownership of their path, and that's a big thing, I think, at this level. It's probably a little bit different at the level that Terry's working with those girls, because they've already taken ownership, a lot of them, and they're on their path, and they've been on their own for a while. At the level where we're at here, is some guys are still figuring that out, and and I think the sooner they take ownership of their career, the better. So I've really, I kind of enjoyed the first few weeks of it, like saying, hey, this is what do you want out of this, But as time goes on, now we're 9-10 weeks into this. Now it's like I want to kind of see. I want to have a little more hands-on on it myself. But in the end, it comes down to them. If they can't get themselves up and put themselves through workouts and prepare themselves now, then how are they ever going to expect themselves to do it in the national finals up on the stage? I mean, they've got to be able to do it themselves now. So in some ways it's good, in other ways it's not. You'd like to have a little more control, but I guess we'll get there.
That's the thing. I think that, what you realize through this, Gene, is greatness is never dictated, right? I mean, greatness stems from desire, right? And it has to come out now, right? I mean, that desire has to come out right now. That you have to want to be, that Olympic champion or that NCAA champion. You have to want to be that. That has to. Nobody's going to tell you to do it. Nobody's going to wake you up and get you going every day. And if you're going to get this accomplished, you're going to find a way through the circumstance and through the obstacle, right? And I don't care if we have, 2 months of training before the Olympic trials, right? I mean, the people that want to make that Olympic team and win those medals are going to do it. They're going to find a way, and they're going to, get through any obstacle along this path. And so this is just another obstacle. Like I told them, we've been training for this forever. This is what wrestling is teaching you, right? It's teaching you so much more than how to put a medal around your neck. It's teaching you to deal with life as it comes to you and as it's handed to you, and dealing with that adversity. And right now it's front and center, right? It's throwing it right in your face, and you need to step up and deal with it and find the strength within yourself. And I think that's really what's happening right now.
Yeah, and that's when we find out what people are made of. Yeah, that's one of the things I was going to ask about your coaching philosophies, your personal philosophies in general. I know, obviously, being close-knit pair of brothers, a lot of twins are not that close. Unfortunately, a lot of them really don't get along well at all, and I find that that's hurt them or held them back for so long. They didn't reach the level of potential they could have on the mat, but much more importantly, destroying that relationship together, that's a terrible thing. But just your philosophies, coming from Iowa, being around Gable, some of my earliest wrestling memories are watching you guys on Competitor Supreme, and the more I'm in on his legs, the less he's in on my legs. If he's going to beat me, he's going to have to go through hell. And watching, footage of you guys jumping into each other's arms after the NCAAs, things like that. Talk about how that Iowa, Gable, and just in general shaped your coaching philosophies.
Well, I mean, I won't speak for Terry, but just growing up where we did in North Dakota, we lived outside in the country, and we never had a lot of neighbor kids around us. So right from the beginning, we became best friends, and because we had to, we didn't have anyone else out there, you know. So we became best friends, and I think as we got into sports, or really we never really got into any other sport really, but wrestling. We had horses, and we were on a lot of times, but we got into wrestling, and I think early on we knew that we had to work with each other, you know, to help each other to get to the levels we did. And you know, you'd like to think as a competitor that you could have did this on your own and got to the level you did, but you know, realistically that'd been very, very tough to do, you know, or think of going through some of the things you did by yourself. It would have been very hard. So not that you couldn't have done it, but it would have been very different than what it was. So we knew early on that we were going to stay together and work together, and not that we still didn't have our fights and
Naturally.
brotherly, you know, rivalries, you know, sibling rivalries, but we also knew that we had to stay together and help each other as much as we can, and that would be a huge asset to us. So, and I think you know, as you get into, you know, now we're on the other side of it, and the coaching side of it, and you really see it on this side, because you know that you have to stay together and you have to work with each other, and your team's got to be pulling in the same direction if you really want to, you know, make advances as a program or as a team. So I think we learned it early on, and and knew that, but now it's, you know, we got to help our athletes understand it as we build programs now. So
I think being a twin, you're always compared. You're always next to each other. You're always, I mean, I think, and you lean on each other a lot, right? And I think throughout our careers, um, we helped each other. We leaned on each other. We saw the value in each other, right? And having that person beside you, and I think there's a lot of just innate understanding that you have, being a twin, that really helps, and you know, it really helped us in our total development, right? And I, you know, not that, you know, when we did finally, the first time, I think we lived in opposite states, or, you know, moved away from each other, that was a very challenging time. It was a good time too, because we grew in ways that we would have never grown if we were together, and so you need that as well. But you know, I think we always understood, or from a very young age, you know, we understood the value in having someone beside you that thought like you, that had the same goals as you, that had the same aspirations, and you know, and to this day, I think we utilize each other a lot. We communicate a lot with each other, almost on a daily basis, if not more sometimes. I mean, there's always been a great connection there, and it doesn't mean that, you know, if we're out on a run, that, you know, Troy doesn't want to catch up to me, right? Or you know, if we're, you know, there's still a healthy competitiveness there. That I don't think that leaves you, but I think there's also a great respect and a great relationship there that you know is as close as any relationship that anyone can have.
Absolutely. And then one of the other things that really stuck out in my mind, looking back, you know, collecting baseball cards as a kid, they also had wrestling cards. And you and Troy were on the wrestling cards, along with the Brands brothers, Alexander Carell, Rulon Gardner, all those guys. And I remember seeing on the back two of the hardest workers that wrestling has ever seen. And I said, what a compliment with all these legends, that on the back of your cards, it said something about the work ethic. So talk about how that developed and how you passed that on to your athletes.
yeah, I mean, I think we saw it at a very young age with our parents. You know, our parents had us when they were 17 and 18 years old, and they, you know, they forfeited their maybe going on to college and having their college careers, and having that aspect of life. They went right to work so they could provide for us and each other, and we saw that from a very young age. I mean, my mom was in the hair industry, and still is, had salons, and my dad worked at a freight company, but they went to work every day, and they were late. My mom's salon was open from 7 in the morning till 11 at night. So we saw that work ethic right away, and we grew up with it, and people have said, we have a strong work ethic, and I'm getting up and working out an hour in the morning and maybe 2 hours in the afternoon, and then maybe I'd go in an hour at night and do something else. That was it, and that was something I chose to do. It was something I wanted to do. It's not necessarily every day when they went to work, they wanted to go to work, but they did it to provide for us. And so I don't know. To me, it was very minimal. It didn't seem like work to me because it's something I wanted to do when it came to the sport of wrestling. So, and all our parents ever told us was, if you're going to do something, don't do it halfway. Go at it and put everything into it. And so it's, I think we just saw it at a very young age, and that kind of we did it in every area of our life. We went into our academics and went into our wrestling, whatever we were doing, we knew we had to put everything into it.
Yeah, and I think I think everyone has a gift, right? And I think one of the gifts that we realized right away is we were willing to punish ourselves, right? And and that's a gift, right? That just come naturally, and I think we did learn it from our parents and our upbringing. There's no doubt about it that that was instilled in us from a very, very young age. But that's all we knew, right? I mean, that's all we knew. I mean, we maybe weren't the most gifted athletically or things like that. We knew that we were going to have to work for things, and you were going to have to put the time and energy in. So that's all we knew, right? We didn't know if we were doing the right things, but we were going to do it 100%, right? And if someone can direct us in a different way, then we'll take that advice. But I think you've got to make up for. You got to use your strengths and make up for your lesser strengths, right? And I think that was one of the areas that I think we knew that we could work and we're willing to do it, maybe more than the next person, and so we just ran with it, right? And we did that and hoped it was the right hope in the right direction, right? I mean, I don't think you know that as a young kid, as you're trying to develop yourself and move up, and you just it's that kind of that wrestling mentality. You just, let's work harder and do more, and maybe there were smarter ways of doing things, right? I'm not saying that maybe we did things the smartest all the time, but the things that we did do, I think we knew that we were prepared, right? And I think so much of confidence comes from preparation, right? And we knew that when we stepped on a wrestling mat, that we were more prepared physically than anyone we stepped on the mat with. And that gave us a lot of confidence, knowing that we could outlast anyone when we stepped on the mat. And I think so many times we get caught up in the science of things and the technique of everything. And that's a part of it. You have to work on those things. But the other part of it, you have to have some grit, and you have to have some of that toughness in there. And I think that's really what that shaped in us through time, is it just gave us a different toughness and a different expectation of how we were going to go out and compete. And I'm not saying that it got us everywhere, right? I mean, we both fell short of ultimately our goals of being on the world teams and winning world medals and Olympic medals. I mean, we never did that. That's still that's something that we'll never be able to go back and do, right? And so, but I think that the approach, maybe, looking in hindsight, maybe it could have changed some, but I think the effort was there, and that's something that no matter what, you can always move forward and not look back with regret, right? And that's where really our relationship with each other really helped, right? And we really pushed each other, and there was always days when one of us wouldn't feel like maybe doing that workout or making the right decision here or there, and the other one was right there to remind the other one that, you know, hey, we have this workout plan, it's time to do it, right? And so I think that you know, our relationship and our routine really helped us in our development, right?
Yeah, I think sometimes too, like with like now with you have a team here, and sometimes you see kids and these days where they want everything laid out for them, you know, and they want to they want you to structure everything, and I think that's why I kind of have liked this quarantine in some ways, because they have to take that ownership, like I said before, and I've kind of put it to them like listen, just go to work, just work. And as a coach, like now as a coach, I can't be there with you all the time. It's like them running a marathon. I'm not running the marathon with you. I'll come in at certain points at mile 3, at mile 6, at mile 10, and if I see you need to make adjustments, hey, you need to spend more time on the mat. You haven't been in the weight room enough. You know, whatever it is, you need more. Spend more time at whatever area that it is. I can I can make adjustments, help them make adjustments. But they've got to work. They've got to put the effort in, and that's not coming from me. That's I'm just going to help guide them down that path a little bit. So, and I think in today's world, that's what kids they've been structured their whole lives. So this is a great time to be with themselves a little bit. But it automatically comes down to the work and effort you put in. You know? If you don't put that in, it doesn't matter what you know. You don't put the work and effort in.
That's it. It is a great opportunity for the kids to learn some initiative. And like you said, everything is structured for the kids nowadays. I remember if you wanted to play a baseball game, you got to ring your friend's doorbell. There was no text message.
Yeah.
You got to call for them. They come outside. You structure the game. The players are the referees. You know, you got to talk it out if there's a dispute. Now it's all set up for the kids. So this does bring a good opportunity for kids to take some initiative. Kids and adults, not just the kids.
Yeah. For sure.
Yeah. No, for everyone, you know. I just watched a documentary on Garth Brooks a few weeks back, and one of the things he said in there, with every curse there's a blessing. With every blessing there's a curse, right? And this is one of those times, right? The curse of the coronavirus is real, right? I mean, it's affecting everyone in every industry and our whole society, but there's a blessing to it as well, right? There's a lot of great things to take from this time frame, and this is one of them, right? That you know, the athletes you know, have to step up right now and be their own coaches, and which is going to help them in the long run, right? It's going to help them really manage everything and really, you know, Coach Gable always talked about that. The sooner you realize this is your career, and you know, most of getting to the top is going to be in your hands. The sooner you realize that, the better off everyone is. And this is really that time frame right now where, you know, I think at first, and maybe not at first, I think there's still some of our athletes that are struggling with it. But you know, if we get through this time frame, they're going to be better for it, right? They will be more prepared and I think put a lot more attention on what they need and understanding what their needs are, and how to get the results from their efforts. They're going to understand that a lot more after this time frame than maybe they put that thought in before. And that's a good thing, right? So yeah.
Sure, that's great. And we always tell people that success leaves clues. So you want to be studying the best and people who are operating at a high level. And mentioned Gable, and there's also Garth Brooks, right? Two very different walks of life, but they both have high levels of success. And you see commonalities among the most successful people. Now with Gable, what are some of the lessons that you guys took from him? Of course, we all know the work ethic. Are there any lessons that maybe you take with you that aren't as well known that you've been reinforcing with your athletes or yourselves? Anything like that?
Well, I think Gable, the thing that Gable did so well was he set a standard, right? That was not he wasn't gonna let slide. There was a standard that was set within that room and an expectation that was set within that room. And it wasn't just from him. It was with just how the room was loaded up, right? I mean, if you weren't gonna do your job, someone else would do it for you, right? And so there was a lot of competition within that room. But there was a certain standard that he set forth that he wasn't going to bend on, and he preached towards all the time. And it was never about, I can't remember ever having conversations about winning the championship or winning the nationals. It was all about process, right? It was all about doing the right things, making the right decisions, living the right lifestyle, you know, and making sure you're controlling the things you can control. And so that was there, and that was, I think, the backbone of everything. And then the next thing, I think, is just the intuitiveness of him, of the Gable intuition on, you know, within that standard and within that structure, treating people as they needed it, and giving everyone a little bit different personal touch as they needed it. And I think he was really good at looking into what the athletes really needed individually and giving them that, whether it was a little bit more attention, whether it was a kick in the butt, or, you know, I mean, whether it was bringing them in for an individual workout or doing something like that. I mean, he was really good at that, or giving them time away and letting them, you know, be off the mat for a few days. He was really good at reading athletes like that and giving the individual attention to them, but yet never losing that standard, right? So I don't know what choice.
Yeah, no, I very much the same. Obviously, you know, I think we never talked about championships really at all, but I think it was the standard that was set was those championships were won long before you ever step on the award stand. You know, they're won every day with what you do. You got to be a champion every day, pretty much. You know, if you want to get to that level and get that medal around your neck, or to get that award, or to step on the top step, you got to win every day. And I think just the environment he set up was, you know, with the competition he had in the room, and the guys that he brought into the program were all, you know, when we were there, we were all very focused on one thing, and that was getting ourselves to as high a level as we possibly could, you know. And we didn't know what that was, but we knew we were shooting for a very high level, you know. And yeah.
And I think the other thing is he put, you know, he recruited the mindset that really, what's more important. I always, and we still debate, and I think it's a great debate on, is wanting to win or hating to lose more important, right? And I don't know the answer to this day. I mean, I think it's a little bit of both. You have to want to win, there's no doubt about it, but hating to lose is a huge thing, right? And I think that there has to be, I don't know which is more powerful, but there's probably a combination of both there, right? And the environment in that room, there was a lot of individuals with that mindset, right? That just, I mean, they wanted to win, but I'll tell you what, people in that room really hated to lose as well. And if you look at the teams while we were there, I mean, and the teams before that really set up that kind of thought process that he had in that. You didn't want to just be there and just be another person, right? Just be a part of that team, or just be an All-American. You wanted your picture up on that wall, right, as a national champion. And that was, you know, that was a huge driving force. I mean, during my days at the University of Iowa. I know that was huge. I didn't want to be just another one of the pack. Right? I think he just recruited that mindset, right? People that he saw that real desire in to win, and it really bothered him when they didn't.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then now, when you always grew up, each of you individually grew up with that strong work ethic, with that mental toughness, with that love to win and that hate to lose. And then together you have that as brothers. Then you go to Iowa, and then you have teammates where it's like that everywhere. So then when you transition into coaching, do you communicate that message, one, to other people and hold that standard of the athletes? And two, how do you deal with that when they're missing the mark and they're not bringing that same kind of, all out high intensity on a regular basis?
Well, I think first of all, you've got to be the example. You've got to show it, and obviously you may show it now, and it's going to be shown in different ways. Like I don't put myself through the same rigorous type workouts as I did back then, but you show it in some of it, and maybe some workouts that you do, or the consistency. Like they'll see me in there every morning. They'll see me in there every afternoon. They'll see me in there every evening, probably. But the consistency you work at it as far as building the program, you're always working towards, the top, or shooting for the top, or shooting for the best thing for them. And I think they've got to see it, number one, as your example, and then it's just a matter of, getting kids to understand that consistency and that process is what's really going to make you. It doesn't matter where you came from necessarily, or what you have coming in here. I always tell guys, like, what you did at the high school level is great, and it's awesome, and no one can ever take that away from you. But I'm more concerned about what you are going after from this point forward. And so I think number one is just being that example, and then just pointing out now you've got to continue to grind. You've got to continue to work and develop on a consistent basis. And once you see that, you can see the program start coming along. But it takes time. Like taking this program over at Fresno State, or restarting it. You think you're going to jump in here and change things quick, or you're going to get guys to a high level at a very fast pace. It takes time, but the more people you have around you, with myself, with my staff, with the administration, with the more guys you can start having that same type of mindset, it starts building quicker. And I feel we're finally starting to get where we need to get, but it's a process. There's no doubt. It's a process, no matter if you're an athlete working on that in those workouts every day, or if it's a process of building this mindset of the program. It takes time. So.
And I would agree. I mean, it's got to be a lifestyle. You have to show that, right? You have to show the lifestyle of, success doesn't just happen for a reason, right? Success happens because you're making good decisions. You're putting yourself in the right situations. You're putting yourself around the right people, right? And, and so you have to show that's how that's happening. That's how this is going to happen. And there's no shortcut to it. And you have to be willing to work. There's going to be hardship along the way. But you really have to be, persistent in those efforts. And if they can see that with you and your staff, that there's a persistence there, that's a huge thing, right? I think athletes need to know that you love and care for them, right? I mean, that really ultimately in the middle is not, that's important, right? That's the goal set by the organization. But there's a lot more to it than that, right? And first and foremost, it's about the individual in front of you, and they need to know that you care and love and respect them, and together you can guide and direct them. But really, it's helping them understand that it's their journey, and we're here to guide and direct, and we'll do that. But we all have to be working on the same page and working together to do that. So, for me, it's different. I mean, the athletes come in. It's not like we're out there recruiting athletes. The athletes, they step forward through a series of events and tournaments, and all of a sudden you have your national team, and that's who you're dealing with. And so they've brought themselves forward because of some athletic greatness or some accomplishment, and then it's helping them get that rest of the way, right? They've brought themselves to a certain level, and now it's just helping them get those final touches, and those are the ones a lot of times that are the hardest to teach and the hardest to bring forward, and it's the consistency and persistence of it, and the process to it, helping them understand. Because there's a lot of great athletes, but then there's got to be a routine to it. There's got to be a structure to the rest of it to get from getting to the tournament and getting on top of the podium. There's two different levels there, and helping them understand that there's always another level to climb, right? And always another level to doing things and understanding what that is and how they can better themselves. And so it takes time, right? That, like Troy said, it takes time to help them understand that, right? Because they may have had success just because of athleticism, right? Just because they're the biggest, strongest person in the field, right? They may have had a lot of success, but to beat the best people in the world and to climb on top of that podium, you're gonna have to be all in. And that's what I truly love about the sport of wrestling is you've got to be all in, right? There's no easy way through this, and that's through that struggle and through that persistence is really where we learn the life lessons, right? The true gifts of the sport of wrestling is those things are learned in the process, in the struggle, in the persistence of the effort and the journey, right? And then that's where the real gifts are learned and that we can carry for the rest of our lives. So that's why you spend your life's work in the sport of wrestling is not because of medals and championships, right? It's about developing the human being and making sure that when people walk away from this sport or your program, that they're going to be better suited for life, right? And to be able to handle situations like we're in, right? With the coronavirus, no matter what happens, people are going to be losing jobs. People are going to be struggling to pay rent. People are going to be struggling to put food on the table. I mean, those are all real struggles that hopefully the struggles through the sport that we face on a daily basis are going to help prepare them and know that they can overcome any obstacle, because they've overcome obstacles all along this journey in the sport of wrestling, and this is just another obstacle. And I think when you get to the point where you know that in life, that it doesn't matter what happens, I'll be okay. I think that there's a lot of relief in that. Right?
Absolutely. Now, I asked you guys a few broad questions. Now the wheels are turning, and I'm thinking of a few specific ones. Back to your competing days, wrestling back to back, knowing it's your brother, and knowing that obviously, you love each other, you want to see the other one succeed, but in that moment you have to be in your own head, so you're not wrapped up in his match while it's going on. How did you deal with that? What are some mistakes maybe you made along the way? Some things you've learned wrestling back to back, being able to detach from one another while still loving the other and wanting the other to win or succeed?
Well, I think we learned really early, right? My freshman year at the University of Iowa, I never made the team, right? And it was early on. It was a struggle, for me personally, because no matter what I did, I couldn't ante up to what Troy was doing, right? And being a twin, you're always being compared, and it was so. Not that it wasn't coming from Troy. It was coming from media, and it was coming from, wrestling people talking, and you're always being compared. And no matter what I did, I couldn't ante up, right? I mean, so freshman year, I never made the team, and I'm riding the pine, and Troy's on the team and was an All-American that year, and you know, it was a hard year, but I look back at that year right now, and it was maybe the most important year in my development in my wrestling career.
Wow.
I did that year to move me forward, and I think that we all hit those low points that it really drives you and pushes you to a different level. And not that I don't think you have to have failure to have success, future success, but it just so happens that when we do have failure, we dig deeper and look deeper within ourselves for truth, right? And for answers. That was one of those years when that happened. Well, coming into the next year, I think we, you know, definitely I was focused on me, but you know, Troy was so concerned, right? I had the same guy to wrestle off the next year to make the team, and Troy was, you know, of course he wanted me on the team too and wanted to do everything, and so the first wrestle off of the year, Troy's ranked number 2 in the country coming into the year, and we have our wrestle offs, and we go into our wrestle offs, and Troy loses his match and I win mine, right? And it, I think it made us realize really quick and early in our careers that, hey, we can be here for each other. We can work out together. We can push each other. We can be here to help each other and push each other forward. But we still have to focus on ourselves, right? And because the best thing we can do for each other is take care of ourselves. And I think we learned that through that process. And really through that process, I learned that I couldn't try to be Troy Steiner, right? I mean, that was it wasn't working, right? And so my freshman year, I think when I tell this story, and I started telling this story a few years ago, and up until that time, I never talked about it because it was real pain inside that really drove me through my whole career, and I tried to keep that with me, but it was our freshman year wrestling the University of Wisconsin in Carver Hawkeye Arena, and after the 150-pound match, Troy was 42, I was 150, but I wasn't wrestling that year, so I was just riding the pine. But after the 150-pound match, they have an intermission, and they come upstairs, and Gable's given some pointers on what's happening and what he'd like to see the next half of the match. And then he looked around and he said, hey, who threw up at the bottom of the stairs? And Troy said, I did. And he said, well, what's wrong? He said, I don't know, I got the flu or something. And he said, well, why didn't you say something? And Troy said, because I didn't want you to give my spot away, right? I've earned that spot. And he said, well, you should have said something. And Troy said no. And then Gable looked around the room, and to this day, I don't know if it's the genius of Gable or just coincidence, right? But he looked around the room and he said, Terry, go pick it up. It's your brother's. Right? So I'm down at the bottom of the stairs, feeling lower than low already because my athletic career is not going as planned. And I'm at the bottom of the stairs picking up my brother's puke. Right? And it was one of those moments where I'm down there at the bottom of the stairs where it was like, you know what, I don't want to be this for the rest of my life. Right? And I'm not gonna be. And so it gave me a different purpose and a different passion and a different reason to maybe there was just a little bit more intensity, a little bit more focus every day moving forward. But it definitely changed the direction of my career, right? But it made me realize that I had to focus on me. I had to focus on being the best Terry Steiner I could be, and not focus on trying to live up to what Troy was doing. Right? And I think at the same time, then the next year, when Troy got beat off the team right away, I think, it gave us both a chance to realize that we got to focus on ourselves, right? And we can be here to help each other and push each other along and, pick each other back up. But we have to still keep the focus on ourselves and what we need to do to get this done. And so that's, I think we learned that, pretty early, right? And I think it's carried us through our lives. So.
Yeah. I was actually going to share the same story. You know, what happened our sophomore year was when at the beginning of the year when I lost the wrestle off and Terry ended up winning. And I think it like Terry said, it showed us right away like we can help each other, but we got to take care of ourselves first. You know, before you can ever help anyone else, you got to take care of yourself.
How about when you guys were both in the lineup, actually wrestling back to back on the big stage in the Big Tens, the NCAAs, and the dual meets where lots on the line? How did you deal with it then to be able to detach from one another while you were competing so the next guy was ready?
Yeah, I don't know. For me, it was probably easier, right? Because I came first, so I was one that maybe had to get us started or whatever. I was fortunate to follow. I felt I was fortunate to follow Tom and Terry Brands, because they usually got things rolling pretty good, and so I was fortunate to follow those guys and use the momentum that they built, and it was my job to keep it going for the guys that came behind me, so probably a little different for me, like going first from Terry and I's standpoint. I just had to go out there and take care of business, and then I could worry about what Terry was doing.
Well, that's another dynamic right there. So Terry's dynamic might have been dealing with watching or not watching his brother wrestle, and you coming right behind the Brands brothers. Boom, 2 big wins in a row. Like, what creeps in our mind is I don't want to be the guy to break the momentum.
Yeah, and most of the time I didn't even know what really. I could maybe hear from the roar of the crowd or something, but I didn't really know what they were doing or how it was going. I was just focused on getting my ready for my match, and whatever happened there should have no effect on what my match is.
Right.
Obviously, if things went well, I can use the momentum for myself. But if things didn't go right for them, I felt you had to be feeling like you were strong enough to turn it around and get it going back in the right direction. So, yeah, you just kind of focused in on what you needed to do, no matter what the situation was.
Yeah, and for me, it was. I mean, there was a string of killers before me, right? I mean, Chad Zabital, Terry Brands, Tom Brands, Troy Steiner. I mean, usually things were going pretty well, right? I mean, and so but really, I never saw much of Tom Brands or Troy Steiner wrestling live, right? I mean, after Terry's match, I was probably out of there, and getting myself ready and mentally and physically for my matches. But I think the thing that Gable preached a lot was the best way you can help this team is you do what you need to do to prepare and be ready for your match, and I think that's kind of how we move forward in dual meets or competition tournaments, anything like that. I mean, that's how we looked at it, right? As I need to take care of myself, and that's how I can best help this team and this organization, and so that's what you did, and that's how you move forward. I think that by the time it was our senior year, and really the one hard time that by that time I already had those skills and knew how to handle it was our senior year when Troy got beat in the semifinals and NCAAs. Not to bring that up, Troy, but that that by that time I was able to handle that, right? And I understood that, hey, I just need to go take care of my business. That match has no effect on my match. And by that time it was okay, but I knew things weren't going good because at NCAAs, if the crowd is roaring that loud, probably guys getting beat, right? Because people, especially at that time, they like to root against Iowa, right? They love to see us losing and getting upset, and so I knew that something was happening, but I wasn't out there standing Matt's side, trying to help Troy win a match. I mean, so I was getting myself ready, but I knew something wasn't going how it should have been going, and I knew I just had to go out there and take care of business. And I knew, and then after that match, when I won in the semifinals, and I knew going into the finals that the best way I can help Troy and the best way I can help our family and and everyone through this was, I need to take care of business, and do my job right tonight in the finals. And so I think, you just kept drawing back on what you need to do and take care of your own business, and let everything else go, right? And nothing else has an effect should have an effect, whether it's a crowd noise, a crowd for you or against you, whether it's your brother won or lost, or the team is doing good or bad. That really should have no effect on how you're going to go out and perform. And so, but those are learned skills. I mean, I think, and you saw it, I think, front and center every time there was a dual meet in Iowa City. You saw what that crowd did. If you never managed that in your mind, that crowd could really, if it was against you, that could really, bring you down, or if it was for you, it could really bring you up. And so, that was something that I think you had to learn. And I think that, being in that crowd all the time at the University of Iowa, there was always a good crowd. And so you learned that. You learned right away that, you need to
manage,
be a part of it, but not let it manage you, right? You've got to manage it. And so anyways, that was some skills that were brought on just from being in the environment a lot.
Absolutely. Those are very important lessons. We see that all the time. Over the past 12 years with Wrestling Mindset, working with tens and thousands of wrestlers, we've seen that a lot. That not being able to distance themselves from the matches taking place before, it's hard enough when it's a teammate that you care about that's probably your drill partner. Then what about when it's your brother? So being able to detach, get away from everything that's going on, and stay in your own head.
Yeah.
Because that's very tough.
Well, and I think you see it too, like, you see things like if there's maybe you have a small dual meet or a small competition and there's not a lot of fanfare around, and there's 3 people in the stands, and then, you've still, the hard thing with that is you've got to get yourself up, because you may have the toughest person in the country you're wrestling against, and you need to get yourself up for that match. It doesn't mean that just because there's nobody there watching or not a lot of fanfare that it's not an important match for you. So whether it's that kind of a match, there's not a lot of hype and things building everything up, you need to get yourself up regardless of the right. And if the environment is huge, like at an NCAA tournament, an NCAA finals or something like that, you need to be able to diminish that crowd, or use it to your advantage. It depends on the person, right? Everyone reacts different. Some people like to be in front of a crowd. Some people would rather wrestle everything in the basement, right? I mean, it depends which kind of person you are, but you definitely have to be able to manage those situations, right? It's going to affect you, and you can't ride on that roller coaster, right? You've got to be stronger than that, and you got to be more of a pillar than being that blowing in the wind, right?
Yeah, I think just the able to just manage your emotions, I think, is such a huge thing. And obviously, you guys deal with it all the time, and with the stuff just talking with teams and individuals that you guys do every day. It's learning how to handle those emotions and manage them. They're going to be there. You can't sweep that under the rug, and then try to avoid it, because it's gonna be there. And I always tell our guys, like, there's pressure, or what if you put it on yourself, or if it's coming from another place, when you're looking to win, there's gonna be some pressures, and if you don't learn how to handle your emotions, you're gonna have a tough time. But they're gonna be there. You just you learn how to embrace those situations, and fight through it. And but they will be there, so it's how you look at it, and how it's perceived by you is, if it's going to be a negative or a positive towards you.
And pressure becomes a privilege, right? I mean, that means you're in the hunt, right? That means that that you're in a position where great things can happen, or you can set yourself up for greatness. I mean, so when there is a pressure, don't try to avoid it. Just understand that means something's going right, probably, right? If you're feeling that kind of, I guess, pressure, if that's what the word is. But that's a privilege to have that, right? If nobody cares, chances are it's probably not something that is going to make a marked difference for your career, right?
Right. And speaking of privileges, I always looked at it as a great privilege being able to work with some of your athletes, speak to your team at different points in time. Are there maybe one or two philosophies or points that maybe we've brought to you guys or to the team that might have been helpful, or something that stands out, something you saw maybe the athletes respond to?
Well, I think one thing I really like what you guys say is like just the little things that you can do, like before practice, bringing the team together, and just having that right mindset. And you say it's something that's very easy, and you can easily do it, and at the same time it's very easy not to do it. So simple things can can really have an effect on the outcome. Simple little things where people don't think, it's such a little thing. It's a little thing that can easily be done, but can easily be forgotten too. And if you don't do it, you're not going to see the effect from it. So that's one thing I really like that I've heard from you guys. Just a little thing right before practice or right after practice, where you just bring the team together and close it out.
Yeah, those mindset principles. Yeah.
And then I think just establishing routine, right? I think it's so important for kids to establish routine, right? Because from routine comes, consistency of effort. From routine comes that persistence, but from routine also comes a confidence, right? And you have to have a routine, right? You have to have routines, whether it's warm-up routines, whether it's daily routines and workout routines. With routines, you're going to be so much more effective in what you do, and then being able to look back on it. Because if you have a routine, chances are you can look back on it, and so if there's success at the end of it, you can look back on, okay, this is how success happened, right? You can look back and look at the routine. These were the right things in here. If there wasn't success at the end of it, you can also look back and say, well, look at where we misstepped here. Maybe this is where we misstepped and we can make changes. And if you never pay attention to those details, then it's hard to know where to change and make changes with. And so, the routine is so important. And I think that
I think what it does is it brings it back to focusing on the process, right? And then instead of focusing on winning or losing, you focus on the process of what you're doing. And that's what the routine is. That's what it is. So.
Yeah, and really putting that pen to paper, so the routine's not in our head, but it's concrete, where I could look at it, I could make revisions, I could give it to my coach. My coach might see some of my blind spots. He might make revisions. So just taking this abstract theoretical mindset and really putting some shoe leather on it, making it very concrete and practical. Absolutely. All right. So how do we, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
And I was just going to say, how do we get more eyes and more people to Fresno State? How do people donate to USA Wrestling, donate to Fresno State? How do we bring more of the wrestling world to you guys?
Well, I think, women's wrestling has been, it's had a lot of great momentum over the last few years, right? The numbers are constantly growing. All I could say to the coaches out there and the parents out there is, just understand the value of this sport, and that it's had on you individually and had on maybe young boys in your clubs and that have turned into great young men, and understand that those same life values and life lessons are so valuable for our entire population, not just not just the boys in society, and open up those opportunities, open up those doors, welcome those all athletes, all kids that walk through your doors into your rooms, and have an effect on them. Because really, again, that's what this is all about, right? It's not about medals and championships. It's about developing a human being and using the sport to do that. And so I just encourage you all to see the value in the sport on our youth, and use the sport to really move them forward and develop them. And I think you're going to find that having females in your practice room is also going to have a whole nother source of an educational tool for you, and teaching male and female how to respect each other more, and grow together, and move along this game of life. And so I guess that's the biggest thing is, just support the women that are out there. We got some great young women right now on our senior level team that are going to do some great things come Tokyo 2021, and just get excited by it, and follow their journeys, and I think if you do that, you're gonna find that it's no different, right? Wrestling is wrestling, and sport is sport, and life is life, and you're going to be able to see those journeys and be quite inspired by it.
Any websites, social media pages we could direct people to? I know they could Google USA Wrestling.
Yeah. I mean, everything's on usawrestling.org, is the website. I'm sure there's Twitter pages and Facebook pages. I'm not the techie guy to give you that information, but yeah, for sure. I mean, just reach out and follow along.
Troy, how do we get people to Fresno State?
Yeah, well, I feel I've been honored and blessed to bring this program back in to competing, and it's the first Division I program to come back, and that's one of the things that what really intrigued me about this job is, hopefully I can get this thing going in the right direction, and we see some other institutions looking at it and saying, why don't we bring wrestling back as well? It's one of the things I really wanted to help do, and so I feel honored and blessed to be in this position. Now it's my job to get it up and going in the right direction, and hopefully we can do that. And we've had great crowds out here the first few years. We've been wrestling. We've been in the top 10 for attendance in all 3 years. I think top 5 the first year we were back. So it's coming and it's building in the right way. And we got a few guys on staff as well, like Joe Colon and Jason Chamberlain, that are vying for those spots on the USA team next year. And so that we got a lot of good things happening here. You can follow those guys, just like Terry said, for obviously Fresno State Wrestling, I think, is on Twitter, and we got Valley RTC, which is our regional training center. So valleyrtc.com. There's ways to go on there if you want to help the program out. So, but yeah, I wouldn't. I guess Terry said too, and not the tech guy, so I wouldn't be the one. But if you want to help out and with these guys, contact us.
Absolutely. Now, if someone were to tell me back when I was in middle school, starting to get serious about wrestling, that I was going to do an interview with Terry and Troy Steiner, I would have been pumped. I am pumped. I'll probably go for a run after this. But you guys just, thank you for all that you do for wrestling. A lot of people don't know this, but our colors, black and yellow, that was back to the Competitor Supreme days. And you guys spoke about Gable. So this is actually a tribute to you guys and the Brands brothers. You might not realize it, but that was always something that really inspired me and my brothers. And we would not be college wrestlers and doing what we're doing with Wrestling Mindset, with good, intense people like yourselves that have seen the big picture and using wrestling as that vehicle to build virtue for life. So again, thank you for all that you guys do. Great talking to you.
Yeah, thank you guys for what you do too. You guys have affected a lot of people and influenced a lot of people as well. I mean, I know my son has been working with you guys for quite some time too, and you know he's trying to develop and continue to keep his wrestling growing. So, and I've seen a big change in him and his confidence and how he carries himself and the work he puts in. So I know you guys have had a big part of that as well. So I thank you for that and what you do for everyone else.
Yeah, thank you, Gene. Thanks for everything, and keep doing what you're doing.
All right. Thanks a lot, guys. Take
All
care.
right.